How does a single cruel joke at a dinner party lead to being served divorce papers on the courthouse steps? What happens when the man you publicly humiliate turns out to be the one with all the evidence? This is how my husband's calm silence turned into the loudest ending of all. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The champagne bubbles tickled my throat as I raised my glass at the Riverside restaurant, feeling absolutely radiant in my new red dress. Our 7th wedding anniversary should have been perfect, but Jonas sat across from me like a statue, barely touching his salmon. "Come on, honey, smile for the camera," I said, holding up my phone. "This place is gorgeous, and I want to remember tonight." Jonas gave me that flat look he'd been perfecting lately. "Sure, Leo, whatever makes you happy." I snapped a few selfies, making sure to capture the elegant dining room behind me. The soft lighting made my skin glow, and I knew these would get plenty of likes on Instagram. Jonas looked tired in the background, his brown hair slightly messy from running his hands through it all day. At 36, he was starting to show his age in ways that irritated me more each month. "You could at least pretend to be excited," I muttered, adjusting my necklace. "This is supposed to be romantic." "I am excited," he said quietly, cutting his fish into precise squares. "Just tired from parent conferences this week." That's when Felix walked in. I felt my pulse quicken as I spotted his familiar silhouette near the hostess stand. Felix dawned from my non-profit office, with his perfect jawline and that confident swagger that made every woman in our workplace do double takes. He was scanning the restaurant like he was looking for someone. "Leo!" Felix's voice carried across the dining room as he spotted me. Several other diners turned to look as he approached our table with that megawatt smile. "What a coincidence running into you here." It wasn't a coincidence, of course. I'd posted our dinner location on my Instagram story 2 hours ago, hoping he might see it. Felix had been flirting with me for months, and the attention felt intoxicating after years of Jonas's quiet, predictable routine. "Felix, hi." I stood up to give him a hug, letting it linger just a second too long. "This is my husband, Jonas. Jonas, this is Felix from work." Jonas stood politely and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you." Felix shook it with an amused expression. "So, you're the famous husband. Leo talks about you all the time." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. That was a lie. I rarely mentioned Jonas at work, but Felix's playful tone made it sound like some kind of inside joke. "Mind if I join you for a drink?" Felix asked, already pulling out the empty chair at our table. "I'm waiting for my date to show up, but she's running late." I glanced at Jonas, who gave an almost imperceptible shrug. "Of course. The more the merrier." For the next hour, Felix dominated the conversation with stories from his weekend hiking trip and his plans to start a consulting business. He was animated and charming, everything that Jonas wasn't. My husband sat quietly, occasionally nodding or asking a polite question, but mostly just observing. "You know what, Leo?" Felix said, leaning back in his chair with his wine glass. "You're so full of life. It's refreshing to see someone who really goes after what they want." I felt myself glowing under his attention. "That's sweet of you to say." "I mean it. Some people just settle into routines and stop really living, you know?" His eyes flicked briefly toward Jonas. "But you've got that spark." That's when Nate Heller arrived with his girlfriend Sarah. Nate worked in our HR department and had been friends with both Jonas and me since college. He was one of those people who lived for drama and always had his phone out, recording everything. "Look who it is," Nate announced loudly, already pulling out his phone to take pictures. "The happy couple, and Felix too. This is like a work reunion." Sarah hugged me and complimented my dress while Nate started snapping photos of our table. He had this way of making everything feel like a party, even when it wasn't. "We should get a group shot," Nate said, positioning himself to capture all of us. This is such a fun coincidence. As the evening progressed and more wine flowed, I felt increasingly bold. Felix kept complimenting me, making jokes that had me laughing harder than I had in months. Jonas remained his usual quiet self, which started to embarrass me in front of my charismatic coworker. Jonas teaches high school math, I explained to Felix during a lull in conversation. Very stable, very predictable. That's important, Felix said diplomatically, but I caught the slight smirk on his face. Oh, it's important, all right, I said, my voice getting a little louder as the wine hit me. Some of us need excitement in our lives, and some of us are perfectly happy with the same routine every single day. Jonas's jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't respond. Nate was still filming everything with his phone, treating our dinner like some kind of reality show. This is great content, he kept saying. You guys are so entertaining. That's when I made the comment that would change everything. Felix had just finished telling a story about his rock climbing adventure, and I was feeling particularly animated, gesturing with my wine glass as I spoke. See, this is what I'm talking about, I said, looking directly at Felix while gesturing toward Jonas. Some people have adventures and really live their lives. Others are just too old and dried up to attract anyone interesting. The words hung in the air like poison gas. The entire table went silent. Sarah's mouth fell open slightly. Nate's phone was still recording, capturing every humiliating second. Felix looked uncomfortable for the first time all evening, and Jonas just stared at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not hurt, not angry, something colder and more calculating. Leo, Sarah whispered, that was really harsh. I felt my face burning, but instead of apologizing, I doubled down. What? I'm just being honest. We all know Jonas isn't exactly the adventurous type. Jesus, Leo, Nate muttered, finally lowering his phone. Jonas carefully placed his napkin on the table and stood up. I think I'll get the check, he said quietly. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it that made my stomach clench. Oh, come on, I said, forcing a laugh. Don't be so sensitive. It was just a joke. But Jonas was already walking toward the front of the restaurant, his shoulders rigid. Felix cleared his throat awkwardly. Maybe I should head out too. My date texted that she can't make it. As he gathered his jacket, he leaned close to my ear. That was pretty brutal, even for you, he whispered. Maybe you should apologize. After everyone left, Jonas and I drove home in complete silence. I kept waiting for him to explode, to yell at me or demand an explanation. Instead, he just stared straight ahead at the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Are you going to say anything? I finally asked as we pulled into our apartment complex. We'll talk later, he said simply. But we didn't talk later. Jonas went straight to his home office and closed the door. I could hear him moving around in there, opening and closing drawers, but when I knocked, he just said he was grading papers. I lay in bed that night replaying the dinner, feeling a mixture of shame and defiance. Part of me knew I'd crossed a line, but another part felt justified. Jonas had been so boring lately, so predictable and passionless. Maybe he needed to hear some hard truths. What I didn't know was that Jonas had heard everything loud and clear, and he was already planning his response. The next morning, Jonas was gone before I woke up. His coffee mug sat clean in the dish rack, and there was no note, something that would have been unthinkable just a week ago. For 7 years, Jonas had left me little messages every morning before school. Have a great day, beautiful, or don't forget we have dinner with your mum tonight. Small things, but consistent. Now, there was nothing. I found our 7-year-old daughter, Maya, eating cereal at the kitchen table, still in her pajamas. Where's Daddy? She asked, looking up at me with Jonas's serious brown eyes. He left early for work, sweetheart. Let's get you ready for school. But even Maya seemed to sense something was wrong. She kept glancing toward Jonas's empty chair during breakfast, and when I tried to brush her hair, she squirmed away. You're pulling too hard, she complained. Daddy doesn't pull. Everything felt off balance without Jonas's steady presence anchoring our morning routine. I realized how much I'd taken his quiet reliability for granted. At work, I threw myself into preparing for our upcoming fundraiser, trying to push away the uncomfortable memory of last night's dinner. But Felix appeared at my cubicle around 10 o'clock with 2 cups of coffee and that sympathetic smile that made my heart skip. "Thought you might need some caffeine after last night," he said, perching on the edge of my desk. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Jonas is just being dramatic about the whole thing." Felix raised an eyebrow. "Really? Because that seemed pretty intense. I felt bad for the guy." "Please," I scoffed, lowering my voice so our coworkers couldn't hear. "Jonas has had this coming for a long time. He's been completely checked out of our marriage for months. No passion, no spontaneity, just the same boring routine every single day." "Still," Felix said carefully, "calling him dried up in front of everyone was pretty harsh, even for someone as bold as you." The way he said bold made it sound like a compliment, and I felt myself preening under his attention. Maybe he needed to hear it. Maybe it'll motivate him to actually try for once. Felix leaned closer, and I caught a whiff of his expensive cologne. "You know, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm a good listener. We could grab drinks after work sometime." My pulse quickened. I might take you up on that. After Felix left, I found myself checking my phone obsessively for messages from Jonas. Nothing. Not even a response to my text, asking if he wanted me to pick up dinner on my way home. When I got home that evening, Jonas was in the kitchen helping Maya with her homework. They both looked up when I walked in, but only Maya smiled. "Mommy, look, I drew a picture of our family." She held up a crayon drawing that made my stomach drop. In the picture, Jonas and Maya stood close together on one side of the paper, holding hands and smiling. I was on the far right, separated by a large gap, with what looked like a frown on my face. "That's very creative, sweetheart," I managed. Jonas glanced at the drawing without comment, then started packing up Maya's school supplies. "Bath time, kiddo. Go get your pajamas." After Maya skipped off to her room, I tried to break the ice. "How was your day?" "Fine," Jonas replied, wiping down the kitchen counter with methodical precision. "That's it? Just fine?" He looked at me directly for the first time since last night. "What would you like me to say, Leo?" "I don't know. Something, anything. You've barely spoken to me since dinner." "I'm processing," he said simply, then walked toward his office. "Processing what?" I called after him, my voice rising. "It was just a stupid joke, Jonas. You're being ridiculous." He paused in the doorway without turning around. "If that's what you think it was, then we don't have anything to discuss right now." The door closed with a soft click, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen. Over the next few days, Jonas maintained his polite distance. He still helped Maya with homework, still did his share of household chores, still said please and thank you. But the warmth was completely gone. It was like living with a courteous stranger. What really unsettled me was how organized he'd become. Jonas had always been neat, but now he was labeling everything. File folders, storage boxes, even his dresser drawers had little tags in his precise handwriting. He'd installed a lock on his desk drawer and started carrying a small notebook where he jotted down notes throughout the day. "What's with all the organizing?" I asked one evening, watching him label a manila folder marked household expenses. "Just getting things in order," he said without looking up. "In order for what?" "In case I need to find something quickly." The cryptic response sent a chill down my spine, but when I tried to press for details, Jonas just changed the subject. My mother Rosa came for dinner that weekend, and I found myself venting to her while Jonas played board games with Maya in the living room. "He's being completely unreasonable," I whispered as we cleaned dishes. It was one comment at dinner. He's acting like I committed some unforgivable sin. Rosa, who had always been fond of Jonas, gave me a sharp look. "What exactly did you say to him, Mija?" I gave her a sanitized version of events, but Rosa wasn't buying it. "There's more to this story," she said, drying a plate with deliberate care. "Jonas isn't the type to hold grudges over nothing. What aren't you telling me?" "Nothing. I just said he was being boring and he completely overreacted." "In front of other people?" I hesitated. "Well, yes, but—" "Leocadia." Rosa only used my full name when she was seriously disappointed. "You humiliated that man in public, didn't you?" "It wasn't that bad," I protested, but my voice lacked conviction. Rosa shook her head sadly. "Some things, once you break them, they don't go back together the same way. You should think about that." That night, I lay in bed listening to Jonas typing on his computer in the next room. The soft clicking of keys continued well past midnight, and I found myself wondering what he was working on that required such late hours. When I woke up the next morning, Jonas was already gone again. But this time, I noticed something new: a red circle around Thursday's date on our kitchen calendar, with a small question mark written underneath in Jonas's neat handwriting. Thursday was still 5 days away, but something about that red circle filled me with dread. I tried calling Jonas at school, but his classroom phone went straight to voicemail. His cell phone did the same. For the first time in our marriage, I felt completely cut off from my husband. At work, Felix noticed my distracted mood and suggested we grab lunch together. As we sat in a quiet corner booth at the deli across from our office, I found myself opening up about Jonas's strange behavior. "He's been so cold," I confided, picking at my salad. "Like he's planning something, but I have no idea what." Felix leaned forward sympathetically. "Maybe he's just trying to make you sweat a little. Some guys do that when their ego gets bruised." "You think that's all it is?" "Probably. I mean, what's the worst he could do? Give you the silent treatment for a few more days?" Felix reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Don't let him manipulate you into feeling guilty. You were just being honest about your feelings." His touch sent electricity up my arm, and I didn't pull away. "You really think I was justified?" "Absolutely. Life's too short to pretend you're happy when you're not." His thumb traced across my knuckles. "You deserve someone who appreciates how amazing you are." I felt myself melting under his intense gaze. For the first time in days, someone was making me feel desired and understood. "Maybe we should do this more often," I said softly. "I'd like that," Felix replied, his hand still covering mine. What I didn't notice was Nate Heller sitting 3 tables away, discreetly taking photos with his phone. And what I definitely didn't know was that Jonas had already seen the video from our anniversary dinner. Nate had posted it on social media the next day, and it was starting to spread beyond our immediate circle of friends. The red circle on Thursday's calendar was getting closer, and Jonas was running out of patience with my games. The notification sound on my phone had been going off all morning, but I was too busy preparing for our quarterly board meeting to check it properly. When I finally looked during my lunch break, my stomach dropped. Nate had posted the video from our anniversary dinner. The caption read, "When date night gets real, there are marriage problems, done an awkward, abharden yikes." The video was only 30 seconds long, but it captured everything. Felix's flirtatious comments, my increasingly animated responses, and then the moment I called Jonas too old and dried up to attract anyone. The camera caught Jonas's face perfectly, that cold, calculating expression that had haunted me for days. In just 2 days, the video had over 15,000 views and hundreds of comments. "OMG, that poor man. She's awful. He deserves better. This is why I'm staying single, LL. Someone please tell me this guy divorced her. The disrespect is unreal." But there were other comments too. Good for her for speaking her truth. "Marriage shouldn't mean settling for boring. She's just being honest about what she needs." I screenshotted some of the supportive comments and posted them to my own Instagram story with the caption, "At least some people understand that honesty isn't a crime." Within an hour, Felix had liked the story and sent me a direct message. "Don't let the haters get you down. You're brave for standing up for yourself. I was crafting a flirty response when my manager, Priya, knocked on my cubicle wall. Leo, can I see you in my office for a minute? Priya closed the door behind us and gestured for me to sit down. Her usually warm demeanor was replaced by professional concern. I'm sure you're aware that there's a video circulating online that features you and your husband, she began carefully. It's just a silly dinner video, I said defensively. Nate posted it without asking, but it's not a big deal. Leo, it has your full name tagged in it, and several people have identified you as working here. We've already had 3 people call the main office asking about our employee relations policies. My face burned with embarrassment. That's ridiculous. This has nothing to do with work. Unfortunately, when something goes viral and reflects poorly on someone's character, it can impact their professional reputation. Priya leaned forward with genuine concern. I like you, Leo, and I want to see you succeed here, but you need to be aware that this kind of public attention isn't helping your image. So, what are you saying? I'm saying you might want to consider asking your friend to take the video down, and maybe think twice before posting anything else about your personal life for a while. I left Priya's office feeling humiliated and angry. This was all Jonas's fault somehow. If he hadn't been so boring and withdrawn, I never would have felt the need to make that comment in the first place. At home that evening, Jonas was helping Maya with an art project at the kitchen table. They were both focused on gluing construction paper shapes, working together with the easy companionship that used to make me smile, but now just irritated me. We need to talk, I announced, dropping my purse loudly on the counter. Jonas looked up calmly. About what? About the video, about your little silent treatment, about whatever game you're playing. I'm not playing any games, he said, helping Maya position a paper flower on her poster board. I've just been thinking. Well, while you've been thinking, that stupid video has gone viral and it's affecting my job. Priya basically told me I'm embarrassing the organization. Jonas's hand stilled on the glue stick. That must be difficult for you. His tone was so neutral, so completely devoid of sympathy, that it made me want to scream. That's it? That's all you have to say? What would you like me to say? I don't know. Maybe that you're sorry this is happening. Maybe offer to help fix it somehow. Jonas carefully capped the glue stick and looked at me directly. Leo, you called me old and dried up in front of our friends and a man you've been flirting with for months. It was recorded and posted online. Now you're upset that there are consequences. I wasn't flirting with Felix, I lied automatically. Maya, sweetie, why don't you take your project to your room to finish it? Jonas said gently. Our daughter gathered her supplies and left, casting worried glances at both of us. Once we were alone, Jonas's mask of calm politeness slipped slightly. I saw the lunch photos, Leo. My blood turned to ice water. What lunch photos? The ones of you and Felix holding hands at the deli yesterday. Nate posted those too. I fumbled for my phone and found Nate's latest post. There we were, leaning across the table toward each other, Felix's hand covering mine, both of us gazing into each other's eyes like lovers. The caption read, Plot twist, looks like someone found a new adventure buddy, or update about drama. Jonas, that wasn't what it looked like. He stood up slowly, and I was struck by how tall he seemed all of a sudden. Because it looked like my wife having an intimate lunch with the man she was flirting with at our anniversary dinner. The same man she compared me to before humiliating me in front of our friends. We're just friends, I insisted, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Friends don't look at each other like that, Leo, and friends don't hold hands across restaurant tables. I felt cornered and defensive. Maybe if you paid half as much attention to me as Felix does, I wouldn't need to find friendship elsewhere. Jonas nodded slowly, like I'd just confirmed something he'd been suspecting. You're right, he said quietly. I haven't been paying enough attention, but I'm paying attention now. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. What does that mean? It means I'm documenting everything now. Every lie, Every deflection, every time you tried to make me the villain in the story you're creating. He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of my Instagram story from earlier, including your decision to double down on humiliating me instead of apologizing. I stared at the screenshot, seeing my own words with fresh eyes. At least some people understand that honesty isn't a crime. I was just defending myself, I whispered. No, Leo. You were defending your right to treat me like garbage and face no consequences for it. He pocketed his phone and headed toward his office. But consequences are coming whether you're ready for them or not. What's that supposed to mean? He paused at his office door. It means Thursday is almost here. What happens Thursday? For the first time since our anniversary dinner, Jonas smiled. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile that made my stomach drop. You'll find out. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone, watching the view count on Nate's videos climb higher and higher. The comments were getting more brutal by the hour, and several people had started sharing screenshots of my defensive Instagram stories alongside the original video. Someone had created a hashtag, Jack would dried up husband. It was trending. I tried calling Felix, but his phone went straight to voicemail. When I texted him, he responded with, "Think we should lay low for a few days until this blows over." Even my affair partner was abandoning me. Around 3 a.m., I crept to Jonas's office door and pressed my ear against it. I could hear him moving around inside, the sound of papers rustling and file drawers opening and closing. What was he doing in there all night? And what was going to happen on Thursday? I had a terrible feeling I was about to find out. Thursday morning arrived grey and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. Jonas had left even earlier than usual, and Maya seemed unusually clingy at breakfast. "Is Daddy mad at you?" she asked, stirring her cereal without eating it. "Why would you think that?" I replied, though we both knew the answer. "He's been sleeping in his office, and he keeps writing in that little book." "What little book?" Maya shrugged. "The one he carries around. He writes in it when you're not looking." A chill ran down my spine. Jonas was documenting our interactions, building some kind of case against me. But for what? At work, I couldn't concentrate on anything. Felix had been avoiding me since the videos went viral, claiming he needed to maintain professional boundaries until things cooled down. Several coworkers had stopped making eye contact with me in the hallways, and I'd overheard whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when I walked by. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Aunt Lydia, Jonas's aunt, who had helped raise him after his parents died. "Leocadia, I think we need to talk." Lydia's voice was ice cold, which was unusual. She'd always been warm toward me, treating me like the daughter she never had. "Of course, Aunt Lydia. Is everything okay?" "No, it's not. I saw the video, honey. We all did." My heart sank. "Lydia, I can explain." "I don't think you can. I've known Jonas since he was 12 years old, and I've never seen him look the way he looked in that video. You broke something in that boy, Leocadia." "It was just a stupid comment," I protested. "He's being way too sensitive about this whole thing." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. "Too sensitive," she finally repeated. "You humiliated my nephew in front of strangers, and you think he's being too sensitive. Lydia, you don't understand. Our marriage has been struggling for months. Jonas has been so distant and boring, and I just... Stop." Her voice cut through my excuses like a blade. "I don't want to hear you justify what you did. That man has loved you faithfully for 7 years, worked 2 jobs to put you through graduate school, and been a devoted father to Maya. And you repaid him by calling him dried up in front of a man you're obviously having an affair with." "I'm not having an affair." "Don't lie to me, child. I may be 56, but I wasn't born yesterday. I've seen the photos." I felt tears of frustration building. Everyone is taking his side without even trying to understand my perspective. "Your perspective?" Lydia's voice rose slightly. "Your perspective is that you deserve better than a good man who loves you, so you decided to humiliate him publicly and chase after some pretty boy from your office. Is that about right? I couldn't answer. Here's what's going to happen, Lydia continued. You're going to figure out how to make this right, or you're going to lose the best thing that ever happened to you. Jonas is done playing games, Leocadia, and frankly, so am I. She hung up before I could respond. I spent the rest of the workday in a haze of anxiety and resentment. Everyone was treating me like the villain, but nobody was acknowledging how neglected I'd felt in my marriage. Jonas had been taking me for granted for months, and one moment of honesty had turned me into a pariah. When I got home that evening, I found Jonas in the kitchen making dinner for Maya. They were laughing about something, and the sound of their easy companionship made my chest tight with an emotion I couldn't name. We need to talk, I announced for the second time this week. Jonas glanced at the clock on the microwave. Actually, we do. Maya, why don't you go play in your room for a little while? Our daughter looked between us with worried eyes, but obediently gathered her toys and left. Jonas turned to face me fully, and I was struck by how calm he seemed, not angry or hurt anymore, just resolved. I talked to a lawyer today, he said simply. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? I filed for divorce this afternoon. You'll be served with papers tomorrow. My legs felt weak. I gripped the back of a kitchen chair for support. Jonas, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Over one stupid comment? You're going to throw away 7 years of marriage because of one bad night? Jonas pulled out his phone and started scrolling through something. It wasn't one comment, Leo. It was months of you checking out of our marriage, flirting with Felix, making me feel like I wasn't good enough for you. The dinner was just the final straw. I never cheated on you, I said desperately. No, but you wanted to. And you made sure everyone knew it. He turned his phone toward me, showing a folder full of screenshots. I have documentation of everything. The flirting, the lunch dates, the social media posts where you defended humiliating me instead of apologizing. I stared at the evidence of my own behavior, seeing it compiled together like this for the first time. It looked damning. I was just unhappy, I whispered. I felt like you didn't see me anymore. So instead of talking to me about it, you decided to pursue another man and humiliate me in public when I didn't measure up to your fantasy. That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened, Leo. And now you're going to face the consequences. I felt panic rising in my chest. What about Maya? You can't just take her away from me. I'm not taking her away, but I am asking for primary custody. He showed me another document on his phone. I have statements from Maya's teacher about how anxious she's been lately, drawings she's made showing our family falling apart, and testimony from multiple witnesses about your behavior. Witnesses? Nate, Sarah, the people at the restaurant, your coworkers who've seen you with Felix. Even your own mother thinks you've lost your way. I felt the walls closing in around me. My mother wouldn't testify against me. I called Rosa this afternoon. She's disappointed in you, Leo. Really disappointed. The betrayal cut deep. My own mother was taking Jonas's side. This is insane, I said, my voice rising. You're destroying our family because your feelings got hurt. No, Leo. You destroyed our family when you decided Felix was more important than your husband and daughter. I'm just making it official. I sank into the kitchen chair, feeling completely defeated. What do you want from me? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. Can we please just work this out? Jonas studied my face for a long moment. Do you know what the worst part is? Even now, you're not really sorry. You're just sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences. That's not true. Prove it. Tell me you'll stop seeing Felix. Delete his number from your phone right now. I hesitated, and that hesitation told him everything he needed to know. That's what I thought, he said quietly. You're not sorry, Leo. You're just sorry your plan didn't work out the way you wanted. What plan? The plan where you get to keep me as your safe, reliable husband while you pursue your exciting affair partner on the side. The plan where you get to have your cake and eat it too. I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come, because deep down I knew he was right. "The papers will be served tomorrow," Jonas said, turning back to the stove. "I suggest you find yourself a lawyer." As I sat there watching my husband calmly finish making dinner for our daughter, I realized that the quiet, predictable man I'd dismissed as dried up had just outmaneuvered me completely, and tomorrow everyone would know it. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with panic and desperate plans to fix the disaster my life had become. By morning, I'd convinced myself that Jonas was bluffing, that this was all an elaborate scare tactic to make me appreciate him more. That delusion lasted exactly until 10:47 a.m., when a process server appeared at my office cubicle. "Leocadia Venn?" the woman asked in a voice that carried across the entire floor. "Yes," I whispered, my face burning with humiliation as my coworkers turned to stare. "You've been served." The manila envelope felt impossibly heavy in my hands. I could feel dozens of eyes watching me as I signed the receipt, and I heard someone whisper, "Oh my God, is she getting divorced?" I fled to the bathroom to open the papers in private, but the legal language might as well have been written in a foreign language. Words like irreconcilable differences and petition for dissolution of marriage swam before my eyes. What I could understand was the custody arrangement Jonas was requesting. Primary physical custody of Maya, with me getting every other weekend and one evening per week. Every other weekend. Like I was some kind of unfit mother. I called the number on Jonas's business card that was paperclipped to the documents, but it went straight to voicemail. His personal cell phone did the same. In desperation, I tried calling Felix, but his phone was turned off completely. I was utterly alone. That afternoon, I left work early and drove to Maya's school, hoping to pick her up before Jonas could. But when I arrived at the pickup line, I saw his familiar sedan already parked in the front row. Through his rear window, I could see Maya in her booster seat, animated as she told him about her day. They looked so natural together, so comfortable and happy. For a moment, I felt like an outsider looking in on someone else's family. Jonas spotted me in his rearview mirror and got out of his car. He walked back to my window with that same calm expression he'd been wearing all week. "The papers say I still have rights," I said before he could speak. "I can pick up my own daughter." "You can," he agreed, "but Maya asked to come home with me today. She wants to help me make spaghetti for dinner. She's 7 years old. She doesn't get to choose. Actually, according to the temporary custody arrangement, she does get some input, and right now she's more comfortable with me." The words stung because I knew they were true. Maya had been avoiding me all week, sensing the tension between her parents and gravitating toward Jonas's steady presence. "This is ridiculous," I said, my voice cracking. "You're turning my own daughter against me." "I'm not turning her against anyone, but I'm also not going to pretend that your behavior hasn't affected her. She's been having nightmares, Leo. She drew a picture yesterday of our family, standing on opposite sides of a broken bridge. Guilt crashed over me like a wave. I never meant for Maya to get hurt. But she did get hurt, and now we all have to deal with the consequences." That evening, I sat alone in our apartment, my apartment now, I supposed, surrounded by the evidence of our life together. Wedding photos, Maya's artwork on the refrigerator, Jonas's coffee mug still sitting in the dish rack. I tried to call my mother, but Rosa's response was disappointingly lukewarm. "Mija, I love you, but you made this mess. Now you need to figure out how to clean it up." "Everyone is acting like I'm some kind of monster," I protested. "I made one comment at dinner. One comment." "It wasn't just one comment, and you know it. You've been disrespecting that man for months, and now you're surprised that he's had enough." "Whose side are you on?" Rosa sighed heavily. "I'm on Maya's side, and right now that means supporting the parent who's been putting her needs first." After my mother hung up, I poured myself a large glass of wine and started scrolling through social media. The videos of our anniversary dinner had spread even further, spawning reaction videos and think pieces about modern marriage and respect in relationships. Someone had created a compilation video set to dramatic music, showing my humiliating comment, followed by Jonas's cold stare, then cutting to photos of me and Felix at lunch. The title was, "When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong." It had 500,000 views. I was about to close the app when I saw a new post from Nate. It was a photo of him and Sarah at a restaurant with several other couples I recognized, our former friend group. The caption read, "Good friends, good food, good vibes. Sometimes you have to distance yourself from toxic people to protect your own peace." I wasn't tagged in the post, but it was clearly about me. These people who had been my friends for years were publicly cutting me out of their lives. I commented, "Wow, real mature, Nate. Thanks for posting that video without my permission and ruining my life." Within minutes, he'd responded, "Nobody ruined your life but you, Leo. We all saw what kind of person you really are, and we don't want that energy around us anymore." The comment had already received dozens of likes. I spent the next hour hate scrolling through the responses, watching people I'd considered friends pile on with their own criticisms of my behavior. Sarah wrote a long comment about how uncomfortable she'd felt watching me flirt with Felix while Jonas sat right there. Another friend shared her own story about being humiliated by a partner in public and how devastating it had been. Everyone had an opinion about my marriage, and none of those opinions were favorable to me. Around midnight, I heard Jonas's key in the front door. He moved quietly through the apartment, gathering clothes and personal items from our bedroom. I pretended to be asleep, but I could hear him packing boxes in the next room. "Where will you stay?" I asked when he emerged with a suitcase. "Aunt Lydia's for now. Maya and I will find our own place soon." "You're really doing this? You're really leaving?" Jonas paused in the doorway. "Leo, you called me dried up and worthless in front of our friends and a man you've been emotionally cheating with. You defended that choice publicly instead of apologizing. What exactly did you think was going to happen?" "I thought you'd fight for us," I whispered. "I did fight for us. For months, I tried to reconnect with you, tried to figure out why you seemed so unhappy. But you'd already checked out. You'd already decided I wasn't enough for you." "That's not true." "Then why didn't you delete Felix's number when I asked you to yesterday?" I couldn't answer because we both knew why. Even facing divorce, even losing my daughter, I still wasn't ready to give up the fantasy of my exciting affair partner. "I hope it was worth it," Jonas said quietly, then walked out of our apartment for the last time. I sat in the darkness for hours, finally understanding that my quiet, predictable husband had been planning this moment for days. While I'd been playing games and seeking validation from Felix, Jonas had been building an airtight case for divorce, and tomorrow I would have to face the consequences of every choice I'd made. 3 weeks later, I stood on the courthouse steps, waiting for Felix, ready to do a defiant photo shoot and prove I'd moved on. Cameras were already lingering. Felix was late. His last text was weak. Might not make it. Then Jonas arrived, calm, purposeful, beside his lawyer, carrying a thick folder. "Leo," he said, and handed it to me. "Final decree, custody order." I opened it with shaking hands. Primary custody to him. Supervised visits for me until I completed counseling. His lawyer explained it like a checklist. My public posts, my continued contact with Felix, the 2 visits I'd missed because I was too upset. Jonas didn't raise his voice. He just showed me one more thing. Felix's Instagram, posted an hour earlier. Felix on a beach with another woman, cocktails in hand, caption about getting away from the drama. Something in me cracked. The cameras crept closer, smelling blood. "Why are you doing this to me?" I whispered, crying now. "I'm not doing anything," Jonas said, steady. "These are consequences. You chose the attention. You chose the story. You chose deflection every time accountability showed up." My mother stepped in beside me, voice soft but firm. Mija, it's time to stop making excuses. I stared at the papers like they were a death certificate for the life I used to have. What about Maya? She'll be okay, Jonas said. She has people who put her first. You can still be in her life, Leo, if you get real help. He looked back once before he left. I did love you. I hope someday you learn to love yourself enough to stop hurting everyone who tries to. Then he walked away toward his car, toward Maya, toward the life I'd pushed myself out of. My phone buzzed. Felix had to get out of town. Too complicated. I deleted it, blocked him. And for the first time, I didn't reach for another excuse, just the truth, sitting heavy in my hands, asking me what I was finally going to do with it.